Welcome back to another episode of Creative Discipline with TheZachMichael. Today we're going to be talking about music publishing and why I believe that all musicians should start collecting their publishing income. Now, a little disclaimer, I run a publishing company called Elizabeth Music Group. We offer creative first administration agreements and just publishing deals in general to essentially help creatives collect all of their publishing income. So if that is something that you want help with, feel free to reach out to us and we can potentially help you on administering your catalog. But today we're going to talk more about the key reasons why all musicians should collect their publishing income and sort of the importance of this. A lot of musicians are not as knowledgeable on publishing, and I really think they should be. And that's part of why I started Elizabeth Music Group, to be very education first. But also, this podcast allows me to educate and hopefully inspire a lot of people to begin the process of learning more about these things and really taking advantage of all of the skills, knowledge, and education that I've learned, and then kind of give that to other creatives who are either en route to being a full-time musician or are already a full-time musician like me. So the first thing about why all musicians should collect their publishing income is because publishing income can be a long-term revenue source, right? Talking to a lot of musicians over the years, if you can build a catalog of music, this can become a very stable source of revenue compared to different other income streams, right? For instance, if you're a producer who also does like live performances or things like that, those are great income streams, but live performances might not be as stable as your publishing checks. You know, your publishing check is coming in every single quarter. Obviously, the actual amount of money can fluctuate depending on how much your music is being consumed, which countries, which platforms, etc. But this is money that you are owed for your publishing ownership on the records, right? And I know plenty of musicians who are benefiting from publishing of songs a decade later, 2 decades later, 5 years later, 40 years later. So if you create music that really impacts people and you have a catalog, that income is definitely something you should collect, because collecting that income ensures that you benefit from all your work on those contributions for a long time, right? It's not something that disappears. When you own 10% publishing on a record, you're supposed to be collecting 10% of that publishing every single time publishing checks come in, right? On top of that, when you collect your publishing income and partner with like a publishing administrator or a publisher, they can help you have control over your works and making sure you get proper compensation for all the different ways that the music is used, right? This kind of control really matters because it refers to things such as like licensing and covers and synchronization and different things like that, which bring in additional revenue, right? Like having a song of yours get synced in a movie or a TV show can be another revenue stream. And while it's possible to make that revenue stream without a publisher or a publishing administrator and without collecting your publishing, you're still missing out on money for all of those licenses and covers and synchronization agreements if you're not kind of handling that, whether it's with an outside company or you self-publishing yourself as a musician, right? This can be very important as you build your catalog and as you create works that are, you know, being licensed and being sampled. In the beginning, this might not be the main focus for your catalog as you're kind of on the come up, but you also never know when a work of yours may get licensed or want to be used in synchronization. And on top of that, I think it's also worthwhile as a musician to be prepared before the moment, so that way all your business is handled and you can really capitalize on that moment, right? When you get that first big song as a producer or songwriter as an artist, if you have your publishing collection all figured out, if you have, you know, all these different things figured out and handled, when you have that big moment, you have the time and energy to capitalize on all these other opportunities, as opposed to dedicating time now to dealing with this stuff later on, where it can become slightly more challenging sometimes, you know, because there's so many things going on and you have a lot of stuff going on and not enough time to kind of address it all, you know? Now, let's talk about the nuance of publishing a bit more in depth, because there's a lot of things in publishing that a lot of people don't really understand. And one of those is that when I say collecting your publishing, you're actually collecting revenue from multiple different sources, right? Let's talk about a couple of these sources and some of the ones that are very important. Performance royalties, typically paid through a PRO, your mechanical royalties, your microsync royalties, etc. It's important to note that your master royalties are not technically publishing. Your master royalties are something completely separate. If you do partner with a publisher, they likely will not touch your master royalties. I would make sure that they do not touch your master royalties as a musician. That is something that you're owed already, and there's nothing really they need to help collect on that front other than helping you maybe register with the label's portal or getting you added to the splits on whatever distributor the artist uses, etc. But as a musician, it's very important that you're collecting these other types of publishing income, whether it's mechanical royalties, performance royalties, print rights, etc. You really want to make sure that all of these are collected so you can maximize their earnings from all the different avenues that exist, right? You really want to make sure that you're collecting all of this. It's also important to keep in mind that you want to make sure you're collecting these royalties worldwide. A lot of people are only collecting them domestically or in the country that they're from, and you're missing out on a lot of other countries that pay out royalties, right? This is very important. The global reach of publishing can be very big. If you're working on stuff that is on a worldwide platform, whether that's an established superstar artist or just a DSP that people can listen to anywhere, or your music's on YouTube, etc., it's generating income worldwide, and you want to make sure that you're fully collecting worldwide, right? So you're going to need more typically than just like one PRO account, or you're going to need more than just your master royalty portal that, you know, one of these distributors gives you. So you want to make sure that you're registered in all the right places, and this is where administrators like my company, Elizabeth Music Group, can come in to sort of help get all your accounts structured, and we have our own accounts with these pay sources to help collect on that, right? But let's also talk about more of the intangible reasons on why you should be collecting your publishing as a musician. The first one is collecting your publishing income can absolutely help you to provide for you and your family long after you've stopped actively making music. You know, these are assets that you own. Every single record is like a house that you own, and you rent it out to different people every single year. And, you know, some years it might make a little money, some years it makes a lot. It really depends on how much people are consuming the music. But regardless, each song is an asset that you own a percentage in. And that can help you create a financial legacy that can be passed on or utilized in any way you'd like, right? Some people liken publishing to your retirement fund in music or things like that. And while I advise you to also look into other forms of retirement outside of just relying on publishing, a lot of musicians do use their publishing income as a retirement method. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the musicians that we sign to Elizabeth Music Group are people who do not make music as much as they used to, right? Some of the musicians that we sign were mostly actively making music back in the day, whether it's like 20 or 30 years ago. And now we're helping them kind of rebuild that financial legacy through collecting their publishing on these older works. And, you know, it's really helping them and helping to change their life financially, and also just allows them to free up time to do different things they want. But on top of that, I also believe that collecting your publishing should help incentivize creativity for you. When you know that you're going to be compensated for your music properly, it might encourage you to make more music. A lot of producers and songwriters and artists feel discouraged when you're making these big records and you're contributing to these art pieces and you're just not seeing the financial fruits of your labor. You're, you know, traveling a lot maybe, or you're staying up doing late nights, or you're, you know, sending out a lot of music, and when something finally connects, you don't see the fruit of your labor because you're not fully collecting on your publishing, right? I think when you're confident that your publishing income is secured, it's going to be collected, you know, maybe you're a self-administered writer or you're at a publishing company who you're confident in that will collect the money and pay it out to you, then you're probably more likely to focus on making new music and continuing to evolve your career to the next level. And this is something we see a lot with, you know, a lot of the musicians that we end up signing, is once they sign to us for publishing, it frees up a lot of time on their business side that they don't have to handle anymore, and they're able to focus on making more music. So you might land more records, or if you're an artist, you might start being able to release more, things like that. And you have the security and safety of knowing that, you know, your publishing administrator is going to help you collect on that revenue for you, right? But also, when you collect your publishing income actively, you protect yourself from exploitation. This will ensure that no one else profits from your work on these songs without being properly credited, right? This allows you to make sure that you're collecting your share and there's no false claims being represented on works and no one is taking your royalties, etc. Right? I think that's very important. Also, this is a very big one. Please listen to this. This is one of the most important reasons why a musician should be collecting their publishing income, because I have seen this firsthand so many times. Musicians benefit from collecting your publishing income because it provides you a super important financial foundation that allows you to reinvest in your career and your life without relying on bad external funding or deals that will not be in your best interest. I have seen a lot of musicians have really big songs but not collect their publishing and then take really bad external funding or deals that involve things that they wouldn't really want to do. By no means am I saying that these deals never make sense, but broadly speaking, I have seen a lot of musicians sell their rights before knowing what songs are worth. I have seen musicians enter long-term deals giving up their ownership. I have seen musicians sign terrible deals where a company will give you $2,000 up front and then gets to profit on your publishing, which is worth $100,000, and they get to keep that full $100,000 because you signed a really bad deal. If you collect your publishing, this allows you to better know where you're at in your career and what types of deals you should be looking at. It also allows you a lot more freedom to turn down deals because you're not financially reliant on them. And this is one of the most important things as a musician you need to keep in mind. And I talk about it so much on this podcast because I see musicians over and over and over again take these really bad deals and regret it, right? Now, let's talk about just the last couple parts, right? Which is that publishing income is obviously residual, right? As the song or catalog decreases in popularity, likely your publishing checks will follow, but there is still money to be made a lot of the times. A lot of the times you're still missing income for some of these songs that, is worth collecting, and you should definitely be aware of this. But also, sometimes people really don't understand when you talk about a song's popularity, it spans beyond what you might initially think. For instance, sometimes a song may lose popularity on one streaming service, right? One DSP. But it might be doing really well in things like radio play or sync licenses that also generate publishing, or even like YouTube or other DSPs, etc. So just because you're focused on one platform, every platform that your music can be streamed on, that generates publishing is one to look at. So a song's popularity isn't necessarily dependent on one platform. We've seen plenty of times songs be really big on certain platforms and then completely irrelevant on other ones. So, your residual income exists regardless of how well it's doing on that one platform, because there's a lot of different places that, songs are collecting from, right? Your song might not even be big in the country that you're from. It might not be big there, but it might be big in some other countries overseas, etc. So this residual income absolutely can provide financial stability for musicians, and you should be collecting that, right? And I mean, to simplify everything I just talked about, you definitely want to understand and actively manage your publishing income, because that will allow you as a musician to secure your financial future and gain the freedom to create music on your own terms, which I believe is one of the most important things when it comes to elevating your career long-term as a musician, is getting to a point where you have control over your career on your own terms. Watching people change their careers once they start collecting their publishing and allowing them to have that financial freedom, that ability to reinvest, that ability to say no to deals they used to have to say yes to, absolutely has changed so many musicians' lives. And I'm incredibly blessed that I get to now help musicians with this with my company, Elizabeth Music Group. It's something I am very passionate about, and I'm very glad that I'm in a position to educate people on publishing and also help them in collecting their publishing, and to do it with what I believe to be the most creative first deal in the music publishing space. But I hope you guys learned a lot. through this episode, and that you're going to start actively thinking a bit more about your publishing income and your publishing revenue, because these are things that are very important as a musician. So yeah, I'll see you guys in another episode. Thanks for listening.